think philosophy is something actually that all of us do naturally until the grown-ups tell us to stop. I think every child is a born philosopher. Every child tends to ask the question why, pushing the answer further and further back until her parents or her teachers say something like, well, just because the world is that way, because they don't know how to answer the last question. A smart child will say, so why is the world that way? The only answer that any child would actually be satisfied with is the answer, because it's the best of all possible worlds. I believe that that is the natural end of human reason. Okay? I think that everything that we do when we use reason is aiming at the best of all possible worlds. It's either aiming at whether how the world works, how to figure out, why things work the way they are, why the universe is structured the way they are, and if something's wrong, it's focused on trying to change it. How can I change it? How can I make things better? Now, the interesting thing is, if this were the best of all possible worlds, there'd be no scope for human creativity, and there certainly would be no need for philosophy, because nobody would ever ask why, right? If it were the best of all possible worlds, why would you ask a question about it? You'd simply bask in it. So we have a really funny and interesting tension, and I think this was in some ways Kant's greatest contribution to modern thought, is to say we're striving for something. We're actually striving for an ideal that, if we were to recognize it, it would actually take away from most of what it means to be human. So I believe that everybody starts doing philosophy in rather simple ways. Every question, why the world is the way it is, why is there evil, why is there suffering, how do I live my life, what's justice, why do bad things happen to good people and the other way around. All those are philosophical questions that occur in ordinary life, and they occur very naturally, again, until somebody says, shut up, kid, and do something more practical. The thing is that philosophy is and can be practical, because I take one of philosophy's most important contributions to enlarge our understanding of what's possible. We tend to accept a lot of the world as being fixed and given. We tend to assume that things were always the way they are now, without really much thinking about how drastically they've changed. And I don't just mean things like the internet, as important as technological change has been, but real conceptual changes in our way of thinking about, again, these great and important concepts: evil, justice, truth, beauty. All of those things have changed radically over time, and they could change again, and we could do better than we're doing now. The first step to making any change in the world is asking yourself whether something is necessary. Take slavery, right? Slavery was an institution for thousands of years, not everywhere, and there were different concepts of slavery, and the very idea of slavery changed radically in the time that it was allowed. But from ancient times, as far as it's recorded, until 150 years ago in this country, one of the later countries, one has to say, in the West to abolish slavery, that was assumed that that was the way the world was. It was very rare that anybody actually questioned conceptually, is this a just way to arrange the world? You took those kinds of relations for granted until you consider what it means. You make statements, we hold these truths to be self-evident, an extraordinary claim, by the way. We hold these truths to be self-evident: all men are created equal. This is, of course, manifestly a lie. It's not a truth, right? All men are not created equal. All men and women aren't created equal. There are all kinds of differences between us. And moreover, the time that Jefferson wrote that, he was owning slaves. So it's an extraordinary statement, because it's actually not about the way the world is, but it's a statement about the way the world ought to be. All right? Very, very important distinction. But and Jefferson and all of the framers of the Constitution thought of themselves in part as philosophers. They all read philosophy, they talked about philosophy, they wrote philosophy. They were very educated men. Until you ask those kinds of questions, you can't begin to change anything. So I don't think that the world would be a better place if everybody became a professional philosopher. I think that's a sort of silly conception. But I think that all of us would be better off for studying some philosophy, because it's simply an extension of what we normally do when we use our own heads to think something out.